So, good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present here about the topic reducing life cycle GHG emissions of renewable energy. We heard it already several times today that this matters actually also for renewable energy. And as you said already, I'm together here with my colleague from Freiburg, from our production site in Freiburg, Silke Schlenker. Unfortunately, you can't see her, but if you have questions for her, you will see her together with me in the coffee break. She's sitting there at the end of the room. And she performs the life cycle analysis for Solarworld. And that's why she's today here with me. I'm very glad that she can be here. So I'm Felicia Müller-Pelzer. I'm working for Solarworld since 2007. Before I did my PhD, and during this time I worked for the UNFCCC, so also related to climate change always, and to the Hamburg Institute of International Economics, and also my PhD was on climate change, so I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk again about this topic. So what I would like to show you today is first of all, why are we asking this question? Because generally it sounds a bit surprising that renewable energy has to have a look at this topic. It's a bit a provocative title because in general, solar energy, for instance, is classified as zero emission, as a zero emission source. So why do we have to worry about GHG emissions? And I show you right now some pictures. So for instance, this is an installation, a Solarworld installation in France. Nice way of living, of course. This is a system which matches very well this roof. You see there are some clouds, but these are not emissions, of course. So this is, you see, emission-free, zero emission, a zero emission source. Another example maybe. This is again an installation, so you have already some ideas about next holidays maybe. This is a vacation cottage where we installed solar panels, and maybe the lights are run with this electricity, but no emissions. Again, a picture, maybe you've already been there. We installed solar modules on the roof of the audience hall of the Pope in Rome. And also, again, these are not emissions, these are clouds. So this is even some clouds in Italy. And maybe a last photo to illustrate what's possible. Maybe on the airports or maybe even in the train stations. In future, you will see more and more people fueling their iPhone with a mobile solar solution. So again, no emissions. So actually, why do we have to talk about this topic? Solar power is a zero-emission source, but what does it mean? The term captures this concept of an ecological life cycle, so an integrative system. It means that waste and emissions are, again, considered as input factors for other uses. But it does not mean that there are no emissions at all, of course. And in climate change, it means that the energy source is carbon neutral and that there are no zero net emissions. So avoided emissions are equal or bigger than emissions generated, the concept. So that's definitely true for solar. Now I would like to show you a comparison between fossil fuels and solar energy, solar power. So this is actually data from our life cycle analysis Silke Schlenker performs. And we calculate here the CO2 emissions, the primary energy needed, the losses during the production and conversion, and the power finally generated for, let's say, a typical household. A typical household may be in a solar system, so that's always our reference value, has maybe 1 kilowatt peak installed, and they can produce around 1,000 kilowatt hours a year during 30 years, because our modules can run 30 years. That's actually possible today. That's why we calculate everything over the complete lifetime of a module, a solar system during 30 years. And also, you see the primary energy during 30 years. So what happens if we don't take solar, if we take coal? So let's say the worst case scenario. We have quite some CO2 emissions, you can see, during this period of 30 years. We have a lot of primary energy we need to produce the 1,000 kilowatt hours per year, and a lot of losses. When you take then gas, it's better already. You see really not so many CO2 emissions, half of the primary energy needed, and losses again, of course. But now I show you the solar case. Solar looks a bit like this. And that's why we are talking actually about renewable energy here and the GHG emissions. We have to produce the solar system first. So actually, yes, we do have emissions. We do create emissions. But in comparison, it's really not a lot. You can see it's really negligible. You see here that the development is exactly the other way around. You start with a certain amount of emissions, but on the contrary, you produce much more electricity, power later during the 30 years. And yeah, in comparison, you see how much this means in the end for in primary energy use and for the power, which is the reference basis for us. So this is actually here, this is actually only this is the production, so not a lot. And actually the other two figures on the top also are life cycle figures. So it means the production, extraction of coal, and then also the conversion to have comparable figures. So yes, it matters, but it's a tiny impact only. So do we really have to take this into account in comparison to all the other sources? We think yes, because there is still some time needed until the wholesaler prices are for green energy and conventional energy are at the same level. That we need still some years to reach this point of grid parity, let's say. But at the end customer level, we are basically already there. That's actually what the WWF today explained quite well, how the market works and how the prices are derived basically. So here I show you our latest figures. They have been published in March this year in our annual report. We publish every year a report with the sustainability details. Also, it's an integrated report. And you see that the group-wide emissions stayed quite constant the last 2 years. And here the emission intensity, or let's say carbon footprint, you could also call it, improved very much. You see the difference between 2009 and 2011, 19% in just 2 years. So that's, I think, quite an achievement. And then there's another concept I would like to present you. That's also something we publish on a yearly basis, the payback periods. But payback periods in relation to energy and CO2 emissions. So just to remember, I think you work quite regularly with this concept. Payback period, of course, comes from the investment case. You have an initial investment and some interest, so the cumulative costs, they increase year by year, but also the cumulative benefits, they increase, and then you have the crossing point where you have actually the payback of your investment. That's the payback period, the number of years. The similar concept for energy, it looks then like this. You have then, on the one side, the cumulative energy consumption, and the cumulative energy generation by a solar system, for instance. And this shows you how quickly the energy consumption during the production process of a solar module is then compensated by the running module in the installation. The same then again for CO2 emissions. Again, cumulative CO2 emissions over the years. And you see that the darker line doesn't increase because you don't have an interest. It's just at the start when you produce it, you have emissions, and then you don't have emissions anymore. And then again, of course, the production, just schematically. So it's like the investment case. I didn't put real figures behind here. So this means how quickly the greenhouse gas emissions during the production process of a solar module are then compensated in the grid mix. That's the calculation. So, and then let's have a look at our figures. They are also published in the report, as I said. We are continuously improving these payback periods. And of course, you have always then with solar systems to calculate it per location. Where has the solar system been installed? And therefore, we give you some regions, some representative places, because there are also quite some differences. And then the power yield of such an installation. So let's maybe take the last two lines. They can be compared quite well because they're two extreme cases, let's say. The US, San Francisco, with 1,670 kilowatt hours per kilowatt peak. There you have an energy amortization time, or let's say payback period, that's the same, after less than a year, so 0.62 years. And the year before it was 0.8, so you see the improvement from 1 year to the other. The CO2 amortization time is a bit higher. It's 1.25 of a year, let's say. And in 2009, not 2010, because we performed this analysis in a 2-year rhythm at that time, it was still higher at 1.54. Compared to this very sunny place where you can achieve very good payback periods, we take maybe Germany. You saw the pictures I showed you before. They were not from Germany. They were from Italy and France. And well, Germany has less sun hours, let's say, and therefore also less yield during a year. We took the nice city Bonn because that's the city where our headquarter is located, and it's in the average, in comparison, quite representative for Germany also. We didn't take Munich, for instance. We don't want to create a too bright picture, let's say. So 940 kilowatt hours per kilowatt peak a year. So below these 1,000 hours we usually calculate with. A payback period, or let's say an energy payback period after 1.25 of a year. Also better before 1.5 years in 2010. And the CO2 amortization time is nearly 2 years. So it depends, of course, on the grid mix. We always calculate this with the grid mix, actually with the GHG protocol data. So, and this is then nearly my last slide, where I would like to make a comparison between the CO2 emissions we avoid. So we really calculate what the installation or what the megawatts we sell per year will compensate in future, and how much energy we already had to put in the production process. So it's really the net value, not the gross value. There are many competitors, actually, they just calculate we sold X megawatt. This is equal to X kilowatt hours, or let's say megawatt hours, and this means X CO2 emissions avoided. And that's not really true, because then you don't take your own emissions into account. And that's what we actually do. So the line on the top, there you see the CO2 emissions avoided in million tons. And below, we calculated the environmental damage avoided in million eurotons based on this CO2 figure. And there we cite always a study from 2006 where environmental costs were calculated to be as high as 70 euros per ton of CO2 equivalent for comparison between the years. All these calculations in solar industry have not yet been standardized. Honestly, I don't know any company doing this. If you know a company, please tell me, but I think we are really the only ones who do this. We calculate again with a 30-year module lifespan, and this time with an average an average yield of 1,270 kilowatt hours per kilowatt peak. So let's say a southern location in Germany or Europe better. So, and again, with the data from the GHG protocol. So you see that this develops quite nicely. And then also Rasmus Pries asked me to give a little comment on whether it makes sense to have maybe 100% renewable energy in production. And I also would like to provide such a comment, because it's in our case quite difficult. We would like to do this. Me personally, I realized my private Energiewende. I think this word is already established in English now, because I switched myself privately to a green power provider. But as a company, we can't do it so far, because as I said at the start of my presentation, at the wholesaler level, there's still a big price difference. And solar industry is at the moment very much under pressure. We have to cut costs where we can, and we are basically really in a price war. That's how you can call it. And it would mean 100% renewable energy would today mean committing suicide as a solar company. That's not sustainable, I think. So you have also an economic sustainability you have to take into account. But what's sustainable is actually to take care of this topic, to invest in efficiency improvements. That's actually what we can do. And you saw 19% reduction of emission intensity in 2 years is not so bad. That's what we can do. And we are changing the grid mix, because we supply these solar installations, and we are changing actually the factors in the long run thereby. And one thing I also wanted to point out, when we calculate our emissions, we don't, of course, deduce the emissions from our own installations. We have installations on all our production sites, on our buildings, basically. And in our headquarter, we also are self-reliant, let's say. So we have solar installation, we have a heat exchanger, so we are completely renewable. So we do what we can and where we can implement these measures, but we cannot yet be 100% renewable today. In future, maybe. But today it would mean about 35% higher electricity costs, more or less. Okay, so maybe as a last slide, before we pass on to the Q&A session, a presentation or a summary of our initiatives. We have an annual reporting. It's integrated in the annual report, the details on sustainability. There you can find all this information again and in detail. We perform life cycle analysis since 2009, and the part for the recycling already for 9 years, if I'm not mistaken. So quite some time. We became sector leader in the sector, so sector leader in renewable energies in 2011 in the Carbon Disclosure Project. And we participate there since 2005, when it was founded in Germany. And of course, Ökotest rated, excellent rating for our modules, TÜV power controlled. That's what we offer. So in future, you will hopefully hear more from us. We are moving in this direction. Thank you very much. Fast.